Mwambe. Charles, welcome to the Royal Crown Breakfast Show.
Thank you so much, Isaac, for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's begin with this issue of 100% progression from grade 7 to grade 8. As a literacy expert, what is your take? What are your thoughts? Is this a good thing or a bad thing in as far as the sector is concerned?
It's a crisis in itself. It is something that has to be worked on, because if we are going to have a 100% pass rate where someone hasn't even performed well but they progress to go into grade 8, that is becoming a problem, because what happens now is that they will not be evaluated based on the writing and reading numerical skills that they have acquired from grade 1 to grade 6, 7. So now, when they progress into grade 8 without that kind of evaluation where they are reassessed using the exams, it means that when they go into grade 8, they are going to be facing challenges. So now, the teachers in grade 8, 9, they are going to have a difficulty, because now they will be going back to the basics, where they will start to, instead of going direct into teaching them more intensive basic stuff, they will also be going through teaching them how to read, how to probably write, numerical skills, which is a very huge crisis in the education sector.
Speaking about, natural 100% progression from grade 7 to grade 8, we're seeing it for the second year in a row. Is this a direct impact or effect that comes by the fact that schools have been closed for such a long time, owing to the fact that COVID-19 has been, with us for the last, let's say, 2 years or so? Is this a direct impact or effect of, the COVID pandemic and the way of probably trying, the authorities in as far as the education sector, trying to salvage some sort of credibility within the sector?
It is a direct impact, especially with the COVID situation, because now they are going to, they are at home. They are like what happened in 2020. Is it 2020, 2021? There was a lot of maybe months going by without going to school. So now these are the people that were supposed to be examined based on the little knowledge that they had, and then they just progress. So that is a direct impact, because at the end of the day, it will be very difficult, like I mentioned, even to progress to grade 10 if not evaluated, because it's very important to have that elimination process where if someone has to go back to grade 6, they have to go back to grade 6 to go and acquire the necessary skills to progress, because as you know, learning is progressive. So now if a child and their abilities are not known, it becomes very difficult for teachers also to, especially those that are on the upper schools, it will be very difficult for them to impart the knowledge and the information that they need to give them.
Okay, let's talk about the delay. The Minister of Education, Honorable Douglas Siakalima, 48 hours ago, stated that schools will not open on the 10th of January as earlier stipulated, but will open on the 24th of January 2022. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing, considering the number of cases of COVID? And what sort of an impact does it have in terms of the quality of education that is going to be given out? Because obviously that puts direct pressure on, the teachers to deliver the syllabus within a shorter period of time.
The pandemic itself, what has been noticed, the cases have been rising. So I think their concerns are very much welcome, because now they will have to look at how they are going to put in place certain measures in schools, especially that there's this other virus that is there. So there are some things some precautions that they have to put up in schools, and then the delay is not really like months, it's just weeks. I think there's only about 2 weeks in between, which is I think for on our side we are fine with it, because by the time they open we shouldn't be having an excuse to say, okay, in schools there are no sanitizers, there are no buckets, there's no water. So with the delay, obviously there is behind the scenes there are preparations to ensure that as the learners return to school, they will return in a safe environment.
Okay. But if you look at it, the health experts are already telling us that we should brace ourselves after this latest wave, come June, July, when the temperatures drop again, the virus will be mutilating at a very faster level, and we should expect another, wave in terms of the COVID-19. And of course, when the rain season comes again next, towards the end of this year, expect another wave. During those times, we might be bracing ourselves for another delay or probably even closure in terms of, the school, calendar. If you put the 2 weeks that we have, and then we say, for instance, we envision another 2 weeks in the next two waves, that's basically almost 2 months taken out of the school calendar. What sort of an impact and pressure does such delays or closure of the school calendar have in terms of a teacher delivering, quality education to prepare these, students, especially for those ones in an examination, grades or classes?
The pressure is there. So the only way that this can be done is by because remember that it has been 2 years now. Okay, 2 years of COVID. I think by now there should be a mechanism that government should have been using, because even as the year progresses, like you mentioned, maybe there will be months without learning so that will become a problem. That's why we are insisting on ICT, but then how many learners can access ICT so that there's continuous learning? So now this puts the teacher in much pressure, because they have to cover the syllabus within the shortest period of time, which compromises on quality, because as they are delivering, not every learner is a fast learner. Others are slow learners, and then a full term is great for them. But if it's just maybe 1 month in a term, 1 month and weeks, it becomes very difficult to have that knowledge disseminated to the learners. So it's much pressure. But then our take, what should happen is they should select strategic topics in every subject that really matters the most and concentrate on those, and then evaluate. The exam should be based on what they have learned. It shouldn't just cover everything, because that becomes an issue when it comes to evaluating a learner.
Okay. Let me ask you this blunt question. The COVID-19 obviously has got its toll in terms of delays and closures. Is this an opportunity for the authorities within the education sector to consider trimming the curriculum, because there's been a lot of silent calls in the last, let's say, 5 years or so,
yes,
about some of the topics within our syllabus really not being necessary for a young Zambian growing up today in modern Zambia. So is this an opportunity for us to revisit the syllabus and cut down on some of the unnecessary topics that are being taught in our curriculum?
You've put it well. You have put it well. If there's anything that will change Zambia's future or make history in this country, it is revisiting the curriculum, both for tertiary and for secondary schools. for all the primary and secondary schools, it will really have a positive direct impact on everything that drives the nation, because as you know, the output of human resource matters. If the output of human resource is capital human resource is poor, it means that even the quality of the workforce in the country will be compromised. That's why we have all these problems where you have someone who's underperforming because of the curriculum. They are failing to deliver what they learned in school. So going back to the question, it is very important to remove unnecessary topics. Why learn about Zinjanthropus when we are a Christian nation? Why learn about, do you know that the European history is more interesting than African history? I enjoyed European history, talking about Bismarck, Hitler, how they brought that revolution, very interesting. But if you look at our history, instead of concentrating on African history, Zambian history in particular, how our founding father, David Kaunda, came in and liberated this country, the background information, what happened, where they did everything. If you look at the curriculum in schools, it's not there. It's just bits and pieces that is there. It's a pity, because there is need to remove some of the topics. There is need to revise to today's. The curriculum should be revised in direct proportion to the current needs in the country, the things that we are facing, the challenges, the solutions that we need are in the curriculum. So now, if we are moving by the colonial curriculum that was left, it means that we are going to have a problem to progress. That's why there's this crisis when it comes to how we are even working as a nation. If you look at Japan has got a subject for those in primary, for ethics, for manners, just specifically for manners, because they've seen a need in the country that people need to be mannered. Because I can attest to you that in this country, not everyone give the neighbors space. Most of them, they do whatever they want and then they leave you injured, all because of the things that we have learned. There are people that are educated, but they don't know how to relate. They have all these PhDs and what, but they're undermining. We saw what happened on social media way back, where there was a debate over certain reputable people, all because of all these things. That ethical part, it is not there. So the curriculum has to be revisited. It is very important that this curriculum, and this is 2022, we are going to, like we promised, we are going to write some letters demanding for the revision of the curriculum, because this is the key point where we are going to progress as a country. It is very important that we progress like that, progressively as a nation. The progress cannot be there when you're dealing with outdated issues. There's no way you can progress like that. It's not possible.
Let's change the trajectory of this interview a little bit and rewind to the 29th of October 2021. During the 2022 national budget address by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Stumbeko Msokotwane, he indicated that the government will recruit 30,000 teachers this year, 2022. Has this been done yet, or it's still in the pipeline?
It is still in the pipeline. Yes, it's still in the pipeline, but these 30,000 teachers, they are going to be deployed in all the districts affected. It's still in the pipeline.
One would want to ask this question: if it's still in the pipeline, what sort of an impact will it have in terms of, the education sector, especially on those in examination classes? Because there's always an issue of teacher to pupil ratio. Now, obviously, if the year begins and one teacher is handling 80 students or pupils, and then suddenly in the middle of the year when the recruitment is being done, suddenly it's the pupil to ratio becomes, say, for instance, 40 or 50, what sort of an impact will that have? Shouldn't this have been done, say, for instance, first week of January, to ensure that the first day of school, these 30,000, teachers are already employed and are ready to go and stationed in their workplaces?
The good part about the current government is that they have already put it on writing that the 30,000 will be deployed, which is a very good gesture. And we should applaud them for that, because as you have seen, there have been a crisis for a long time. So I don't think waiting for just probably weeks or a month for that to happen should really worry us that much. But definitely, once that is done, everything will fall in place. When the teacher-pupil ratio is reduced, it means that even delivery of quality education will be on point.
Okay. Now, when you speak about quality education, one aspect that a lot of people don't think about, obviously they always think about the learners or the students or the pupils, but one part of quality education is the teachers themselves. Now, I know that one of the impact of the COVID-19 has been the fact that some civil servants, which include teachers, were given debt relief through the debt swap scheme last year. This was scrapped off when the UPND Alliance formed government. How has this move affected teachers and their ability to deliver quality education we expect from them, considering that from paycheck to paycheck, suddenly you're expected to get, say, for instance, 6,000, and suddenly all those, debt or all those loans that you may have, contracted, suddenly are reappearing on your pay slip, and subsequently you are getting a 3,000 instead of the 6,000. How is this affecting teachers?
It has affected teachers negatively because now, like you've mentioned, what you are expecting to get is more or less than what is there because of the debt swap. So this has really been very much negative. But then, if you remember very well, the Vice President in Parliament mentioned that they are still reconsidering to do the debt swap. They just want to understand its mechanism well. Then, obviously, they will do something about it.
Let's change the direction once again of this discussion. So many topics and issues to discuss around the education sector, and in particular, the impact of COVID-19 on the sector. One interesting debate came a few months ago, let me say 2 months ago, when government said that for you to enter a government building, you need to be vaccinated. In this regard, with COVID cases rising, as a literacy expert, do you think government should make it mandatory for students and teachers to be vaccinated in a bid to ensure that the wheels within the education sector continue to move even during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Vaccination always has to be, it doesn't have to be a mandate. Like, what I mean is to impose that on learners and teachers, it is not okay, because now that is riding on the rights of the citizens. So when it comes to vaccination, it has to be by a person's choice, always by a person's choice. If a pupil has to be vaccinated, it has to be by consent of the parents. It always has to be like that. It's important to uphold the Constitution and then to ensure that even if it is government, we all, citizens, people in government, we all follow what the Constitution says, especially when it comes to the right to conscience. Okay, someone has to choose based on their conscience whether they should go ahead with that or they shouldn't go ahead with that. So it's very important that when it comes to that, all we can do is to sensitize to the citizens to say, okay, these are the benefits and this is good, and then to just convince the citizens to go ahead willingly to get vaccinated.
Okay. When the campaigns ahead of the general elections last year were taking place, one of the biggest, campaign promises was the issue of free education that the UPND Alliance was talking about on their campaign trail. I'm sure as a parent, especially during these COVID-19 times when, jobs, have been cut, many parents have lost their jobs, others are working less hours, and of course getting less pay as a direct impact of the COVID-19. When you heard as a parent, obviously, not as a literacy expert, when you heard this as a parent that there'll be free education, obviously that was relief in terms of the money that you can save because now the government will take your child to school. Do you feel a little bit cheated as a parent and a guardian who is taking a Zambian child to school that the UPND, for lack of a better term, since forming government have done a U-turn and said only those who are vulnerable will ultimately access this free education?
Free education from 1 to 12, it is free. It is free.
The initial statement, and I quote, was that it would be free education between primary up until tertiary education. That has changed. Do you feel a little bit cheated as a Zambian and as a guardian and a parent?
I don't feel cheated.
Okay.
Because as
Why not?
We are citizens. We have to be supportive of government. Of course, there were campaigns about the free education.
When they tell us a blunted lie?
Pardon?
Should we be supportive of a government when they tell us a blunted lie?
It is not a lie. I'm not that I'm defending the government or anything.
Well, they did say that it will be free education from primary to tertiary education.
Yes, so sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times when you're undergoing change, there are certain things that has to be put in place, and this is a government that has been there just few months. So to just quickly judge them from that perspective, it is very unfair, because what about the previous government? Why didn't they go about with the same initiative?
This in 2022. They said because 2021 it was not their budget, they will implement it in 2022. So in a nutshell, let me press you again against the wall. This is 2022. They're telling us a different story. Should we celebrate this? Should we be applauding them because they've shifted camp or not?
I will still stick to that to say change is progressive, and then it is too early. Remember that they have 5 years, and then this is just their first year of the budget. So this budget, you can look at it as a prototype where you test what you have laid down. Not that I'm saying that what they have laid down will work or not, but this is their first budget, and then there's a lot of goodwill in that budget if you look at it. And then with this free education, definitely it will be delivered according to what they have promised in their campaigns, because with just their first year, they are talking about 30,000 teachers, talking about CDF that has been increased to do with infrastructure, school infrastructure, equipment, and all those things that require to be upgraded. So now, when it comes to free education for the learners in class, it is progressive. I believe it is progressive. When we come to 2023, we should see that everyone is now enjoying that free education to the core.
Okay.
Not that I'm the spokesperson for this government, no, but I don't want to sound like that, no, but I'm very optimistic to say that definitely it will be delivered in totality. It is not the issue of being cheated, but it's the issue of gradual change. Okay. Gradual change. It's like when you're going into the battle, you're thinking that I think when I reach at the front line, this is what I would do. But when you go to the front line, you find that there are a lot of things that you have to put in place. Okay.
I know that these are challenging times, and I know that you are also facing a challenge in terms of time, because I know you need to rush off for other, important, engagements. So in conclusion, as we end this particular interview, we know that the pandemic has had many, many different, facets that have engulfed and mushroomed as challenges for the education sector, talking about delays in terms of opening of schools, talking about closing of schools, talking about how difficult and challenging the internet online learning lessons has been, for instance, for those living beyond the urban cities where the internet connection could be problematic. Some of them, even parents within urban cities, might not have the extra income owing to the fact that they've lost jobs, to buy bundles on a daily basis for their children to learn online and so on and so forth. So looking at it from a holistic perspective, as a literacy expert, Charles, what would your advice be in terms of solutions to the many challenges that have come about because of COVID-19 on the education sector, to the authorities, if you had an opportunity, for instance, to speak to the Minister of Education or even the President himself in terms of solutions that can work in this particular moment in terms of the education sector in the face of COVID-19?
The first thing to embrace is ICT, online learning, which is very important at this point because with the pandemic, on and off schools closing, opening, that is not good. So looking at 2020, 2021, I think based on those 2 years, by now we should come up with very important solutions like ICT. Pupils, whenever they break off, they continue learning from home. Okay, if it's providing them with the phones that they can access or any other way that it can be done, I think that should be top priority. Okay, and then the second one is revisiting the curriculum. I think it's very important that the curriculum should be worked on. This is a cry for every Zambian because what we have is an outdated one that does not address the Zambian challenges at the moment. And then the third one is to ensure that with this pandemic that is there, all the precautions that has to be put in place, they have to be there. Based on these 2 years that have passed, I think this time we shouldn't struggle like the way the struggle was in 2020. The struggle was in 2021. The struggle shouldn't be continuous. The struggle has to be worked on. Those challenges have to be worked on so that now we are more proactive and solution-based. Because what has happened, if you look at it, even yourself, Isaac, you see that 2020, the pandemic was there. There was no proper solution but to close down. 2021, no proper solution but to close down. Now, 2022, we have shifted about 2 weeks. We don't know what will happen the rest of the year. So I think it's very important that with this pandemic, we ensure that there's continuous learning in schools.
Charles Murambe, literacy expert, many thanks for sharing your insights in regards our topic of discussion, a closer look at the Zambian education sector during the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be calling upon you in subsequent programs just to get your thoughts as issues continue to unfold within the education sector.
I thank you so much, Isaac. I appreciate for the time that you have given us. Thank you so much. I appreciate.
Okay, thank you. So that was Charles Murambe, the guest that we had in studio today via the phone because of other pressing engagements. He couldn't make it into the studio, but we thank him for taking time off his busy schedule to discuss our topic of discussion. A closer look at the Zambia education sector during the COVID-19 pandemic is what we were discussing. We're going to take a short break. On the other side, the Royal Crown Breakfast